Hi there folks, I'm Bryce Holdaway, he's Ben Kingsley, and we are the co-hosts of Australia's #1 property podcast, The Property Couch, which brings you the insider's guide to property investing. And today we want to talk about a very, very important topic because ultimately, Ben, if someone wants to invest in property, they need to know the difference between investment stock and investment grade.
Yeah, they do. They need to understand the science of scarcity and in terms of supply demand. So what we're talking about there is plenty of properties that are built that are tailored for sort of volume investors, but that's not good buying in our view, is it, Bryce?
No, just because you can live in a property and you can rent it out doesn't mean it is a great investment property, because there's over 15,000 suburbs in this country, there's millions of dwellings, and the question is, how do you know which one is investment grade and which one is investment stock? And that there is where the science lives.
Yeah, it does. It's all about trying to understand the psychology of buyers. And let's face it, if 70% of the stock is actually owned by owner-occupiers, they are the price makers. So investors should be the price takers, the smart ones anyway. We don't want to be basically buying into Lego land where there's an oversupply of very dull properties, because we won't get capital growth.
A key point there that Ben just mentioned, you want to be a price taker, not a price maker. You want the owner-occupier market, which is around 70% of the market, to be driving the momentum of the market, and as an investor, you want to just get sucked along for the ride. And so therefore, if you're buying into a market, for example, Ben, that's got that flipped around, where it's 70% investors and 30% owner-occupiers, unfortunately you're on the wrong side of the ledger, aren't you?
Yeah, you certainly are. I mean, ultimately, if you ever need to sell a property, and let's hope you don't, let's hope you can live off the passive income that the property generates as part of your retirement planning. But if you do, wouldn't it be great if you had 5 or 6 buyers competing for your property, as opposed to maybe someone who might just come along sometime into the future, where that's not putting pressure on the value of the property popping?
Very good point, Ben. So one thing to keep in mind is that owner-occupiers buy with their heart and investors buy with their calculator. So you want to buy a property that if you were to put a for sale sign out the front, you want someone to fall in love with that property. You want logic to go out of the window, and you want them just to pay whatever it takes to get it. Because for you as an investor, that's ultimately the return you're going to get. But if you're a buy and hold investor, what that actually means is someone around the corner got a really great result and it compares favourably to yours. When you send the bank around to value yours, guess what? Yours is going to be valued up higher as a result of an owner-occupier falling in love with that property around the corner.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if you think about from a supply point of view, if there's hundreds and hundreds of properties similar to yours in the same building, and someone has to be forced to sell because they've got a financial situation that forces them to sell, that's going to put pressure on all the other values in that particular location. So what we talk about is getting out in the streets and looking for not only the property but also the location appeal and the neighbourhood appeal and the living and lifestyle element attached to that. And all of a sudden the combination of that location and also the property sitting in behind it does heavy lifting for you.
Very good points, Ben. So just let's recap. If you have a property that you put a tenant in, ultimately it's investment stock, because you can tell the tax department that you want to get your deductions, you've claimed some rent, and at the end of the day, if the equation works out, you get a tax refund. But you're not just interested in investment stock. You actually want it to be investment grade. So we also want to have all of those things that Ben was talking about. You want to have the owner-occupier appeal. You want to have all the lifestyle drivers that come with it. So therefore, folks, if you are a property investor or you're wanting to be a property investor, you need to understand the difference.
You do. I think one of the big things that we know in the sort of data that we've analysed is that the location does 80%. As a rough rule of thumb, it does 80% of the heavy lifting, and the property itself only does 20%. Now, there is a caveat to that in regards to if you've got medium or high density accommodation of one property type, namely, units or apartments. The reality is that does affect. So even the location's doing a lot of that lifting, it doesn't help when there's an oversupply or there's lots of stock that people aren't interested in buying.
Ben, you've got a great story when you talk about a house that's built by the same builder in Castlemaine and the house built by the same builder in Hawthorn. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so effectively back in the gold rush, the late 1890s, what we're talking about here is these properties were built very similar. So beautiful handcrafted type properties. But fast track to today, obviously Castlemaine and the gold rush is now no longer around, and all of the properties that were built in Hawthorn. Now, if we put those two next to each other, this property in Hawthorn might be worth 3 to 5 million. This property in Castlemaine might be only worth $1 million. So from the reality point of view, that obviously clearly shows that where the location of that property is is going to give the lifting in terms of that appeal, and that people who are buying with their hearts, not their heads.
So it sounds like land value is more important than land content, and the
Yeah.
location does 80% of the heavy lifting. So that's a very good point, Ben. So if you want to learn more about this on the Property Couch, we've done a whole episode on it. Episode number 8, investment stock versus investment grade. So if you want to go and check that out, why don't you go to thepropertycouch.com.au, and while they're there, Ben, they can download something.
Yeah, they can download the Money Smart, so it's a free download. We're passionate about helping households manage their money better, so you can also download that and get educated around how you need to get your money house fit.
Thepropertycouch.com.au.